Rebels, and welcome to episode 10 of the Rebel and Reawaken podcast. It is time to rebel against merely surviving by reawakening your passions and zeal for life to truly begin thriving. This podcast was created to give you practical and usable tips and tools that you can use to help cultivate a life in recovery that you love and can't wait to live out each day. Together, we are saying goodbye to the things that drain us and leave us feeling depleted so that we can step into the life we were made for. While this podcast is geared towards those in recovery from drugs and alcohol, anyone can benefit from the tools we discuss here because if we're honest, we are all recovering from something. At some point in time, we are all in the process of recovering from life in one way or another. So you are welcome here, and together we will recover life and create a life we love to live. This week, we talk to my friend Kelly. She talks about staying sober when trust is broken and choosing to stay sober and getting sober because it was her choice. So I am really excited for you to listen to Kelly's story. She and her husband have been through it and they have made it through on the other side, and she did it sober. So I am so excited for you to hear some tips and some tools from Kelly and just to hear her story and know that you are not alone. Let's dive in. All right, Kelly. Well, thank you for joining us on the podcast this week. I'm super excited for the listeners to get to meet you and to hear your story. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Just start from the beginning and tell us your journey, how you started drinking or using, and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Kelly. I am 34 years old, and I started drinking when I was 12. I lost my dad to suicide um after being sexually abused by him, and my sisters were also sexually abused by him. So I really started drinking heavy probably when I would say 16, and I met my boyfriend, who's now my husband. We've been together for almost 19 years, and we have an almost 15-year-old son. Um, when I was younger, I was the caregiver to my family. I had to grow up really quickly, and I kind of took care of my family. My mom, she went downhill really fast after my dad passed, and she would stay in bed. So I became mom. I made sure that my little brother, who was 10 at the time that my dad killed himself, I made sure he was okay. Like, I did everything for him. And one of my sisters was going through episodes of attempting suicide, and she was losing it, and it was really really hard for me to see. I was around alcohol my whole life. My dad was a really heavy drinker. He would drink from the time he got up until he went to bed at night, and God forbid he didn't have that alcohol. My mom went through a stint where she was drinking daily as well. She would drink a fifth of vodka and a gallon of orange juice a day. um and that there were some horrible things that happened while they were drunk, and um I went through a lot of my childhood living in fear, that something would snap in my dad and he would turn on us. And a couple times he did. And so I guess when I really started drinking, it was to, it took it all away. I was literally in my own little world, and I that was my way of, well, I don't have to deal with this. So it just got progressively worse, and a little bit was never enough. One thought, one little thing that happened, I had a drink, and I would just have more and more and more. To the point where I was blacking out almost every night just to be able to sleep. And um my son getting older, he never said anything to me, but I could see it on his face. I could see that he didn't like it. He didn't like who I was when I was drinking. Um, my husband, the same thing. My husband hated it. And I don't drive, so my husband would take me to the liquor store because he knew that if he didn't, I would still find a way to go and get my alcohol. And um so I would take 2, maybe 3 trips to the liquor store a night. um I would tell him that I was just grabbing 1 beer, but I would fill my purse with shooters, and I'd go into the bathroom and just sit and drink by myself. And I could also see it on his face, and I hated looking over at him and seeing the disappointment on his face. And I knew that that's not who I was. I definitely wasn't me. Um, so, let's see, January of 2021, I caused yet another huge fight, and I was causing them daily almost. So my sister-in-law, my husband's sister who lives in Oklahoma, we were on the phone, and she said, and I'll never forget these words. She said, "You're going to lose everything." She said, "James doesn't deserve this. James is my son. Tony doesn't deserve this. That's my husband." And she said, "And you don't deserve this." And when she said, "I don't deserve this," that's when a switch kind of went off. And I was like, oh, I don't deserve this. And I started thinking, I have that control. I have to take control of me. So I walked into a clinic and I signed myself up for CBT classes. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. And I started a group that was a group of other people trying to get sober as well. I was the only one in the group that did it voluntarily. Everybody else was court ordered to do it. Um, so that was kind of like, I was doing it because I wanted to. I I knew that I was ready. Everybody had been telling me for a long time that I needed to stop drinking. And I tried putting myself in detox a couple times, and it was terrifying. And I was even more scared, I think, walking into that clinic than I have ever been of anything, because I knew what was going to happen when I got sober. I knew I was going to have to face everything that I'd been drowning with alcohol, everything from my childhood trauma to things that I had done. I had to face it. And I was so scared. But that being said, I, I started the classes, and I had to do 24 classes. They were 1 class every week. And it was during COVID, so I wasn't working. Um, and it was actually like, it was really empowering to me that I had finally found the strength to do something positive for myself, because I hadn't in so long. I was worried about everybody else, and that was it. If I knew that they were taken care of, same with my family. If I knew my son had been fed, he had everything that he needed, then it was time for me to just get trashed and go to sleep. But that wasn't taking care of me. That was killing me. And I had gone to the emergency room several times because I was so sick from the alcohol. And I just didn't see it when it was happening. Now looking back, I'm like, I'm lucky to be here because I was drinking so much that I could have I could have killed myself and not even realized it. So my son and my husband were watching me just wither away. And that is what I was trying so hard to keep my son from. I didn't want him to grow up the way that I did. And yet I was doing that to him. And I see it now, but I didn't see it then. And sometimes I still beat myself up for everything that I missed in his childhood because I wasn't sober for one day when he was little, not one. Every birthday party, Christmas, Thanksgiving, I had to have a drink just to be able to function because my anxiety was so high that I felt like I needed it just to be normal. And so looking at me now, a year and 8 months into my sobriety, I I say this a lot and people tell me that I can't I can't really focus on that, but I wish I would have done it a long time ago. If I knew that I could have the life that I have now and I could feel the way that I feel without alcohol, I would have done it a long time ago. And yeah, there's been things that have happened. Um so let's see. December of 2021, I was 11 months into my sobriety and there were some things going on with me and my husband. Um I found some conversations on his phone and I didn't know how to react to it. My usual way of reacting to something is drinking it away, ignoring it. It's not happening. Just numb it, forget about it. Well, instead, I called my brother in law to talk. Because if I got in my own head, I knew that I, I'd probably drink. So to get out of my head, I called somebody and I talked. And um, I'll never forget what he said to me, and this sticks with me. He said, "Don't let this be a reason." That's a big one. That's what I carry with me. So if anything happens that maybe I'm not fully in control of, I sit with that. Don't let this be a reason. So I didn't. I didn't let that be a reason. I sat with it. I thought about it. I worked myself through it until I got the courage to say something to my husband about it. I've never done that. In the 17 years that we've been together, I'd never done that. When something bothered me, it was done. But telling him how I felt and how it made me feel and being able to use my voice was so empowering. And I was so proud that I had found that and that I had used it. I don't live in that fear anymore that I'm going to upset somebody or I'm going to say something wrong. I don't carry that burden with me anymore. And it's a burden that I carried forever. And I thought that if I said something that I was burdening the next person, and the people that we love, they want to know how we're feeling. They want to be let in. Even if it's something negative, they want to know. Like me, if I'm doing something wrong, I want to know that I'm doing it wrong so that I can fix it. So for my husband, for him hearing that from me was huge. And so I believe that that is why our relationship is as strong as it is now, because it's the strongest that it's ever been. Um, and there was another thing that happened um, while I was at work, something with a coworker. Um, and another reason that I could have turned back to alcohol. But that's what I'm getting at is I now have to face those things that caused me anxiety, caused me pain, I have to feel all of that. And um, I'm still going through um, the court thing with my former coworker. And I haven't even thought about drinking. I'm nervous as can be about what the outcome is going to be, but it's not going to make it any better to just get trashed. And it's still going to be there tomorrow. It's still going to be there the next day. I may be able to bury it for a few hours, but it's still going to be there. And um, me being able to just sit with those feelings, and sometimes it's really hard. And I think the hardest day that I had was the day of my dad's anniversary, the day that he committed suicide. I, let's see, 2021, it was 20 years to the day. May 10th of 2021. I'd been sober for 4 months. I cried all day. I told my husband, I need a day. And I felt everything. I remembered all the pain that I felt that day. I remembered every event that took place throughout that day. And it was horrible. But it felt so good to finally feel it. I hadn't felt that pain since the day it happened. So all that rushing back was, it felt good because I felt like I was alive, like I could still feel. And I just I let it all go. I let it go. And that was big for me because could you imagine holding all that pain and sadness and just holding it in for so long? That is not healthy.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of us do is throughout the years, we don't realize it, but these anniversaries, these hard days, they come along and we drink, right? And then, or we use, or we do whatever. And it's so every year that passes and we drink, we're just storing up that pain for a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And then when we get sober, we have to feel it. And that's what I think keeps so many people stuck from getting sober for so long is that they, like you were saying, you didn't want to have to face the trauma and the pain that you'd been like storing away all these years. And yeah, so it's so empowering and it's such a relief. It sounds so counterintuitive what you're saying. Like it felt good to feel these feelings, but it really does. Like it's so freeing when you actually let yourself feel all these feelings that you've been just pressing down for so long. Like how did you feel the next day? Like how after you felt all the bad emotions, you let yourself cry, yourself feel angry. How did you feel that next day?
I felt amazing the next day. For one, I knew that, like I said a few minutes ago, like the next day after drinking, all that stuff is still there. But the next day after I let myself feel all of that, I felt free. I felt lighter. I felt like I could skate through my day and I wasn't worried about all this stuff that I have no control over. It felt really good. And sometimes after days like that, because I have had them, I will continue to have them. Um, I call it an emotional hangover. So like if I have a headache, because I get headaches every time I cry, but it's a different kind of feeling. Like, it'll go away in a hour or two. Take some medicine, it's gone. Um, it's not like when I was drinking and I got a hangover and I was just drink it away. That was my answer for everything. Drink it away. If I had a hangover, I grabbed a drink and it was gone. Why was it gone? Because I was drunk again. And that feeling, it wasn't a good feeling when I was doing it. Like, drinking used to be fun for me. It just stopped being fun. It started being something to do and something where I wasn't me. And part of that was me not loving myself. And I didn't realize that that was a thing, honestly, until I started counseling. And um, loving yourself is huge. And people said it to me all the time, like that nobody else could love you until you love yourself first. That is so true, because I wasn't letting anybody else love me. If my husband tried to get close, like, I wanted this love from him, but I couldn't receive it because I didn't love myself. So me tearing down that wall and um getting rid of the alcohol, it opened up so many things for me and so many things for my relationships with not only my husband, not only my son, but my family as well. Because it was like I was holding all this animosity towards them because of things that were also out of their control. And what can you do about it? You have to find a way to deal with those feelings and just let it ride. I mean, it sounded so scary to me, but after I did it, I was like, wow. Wow. And being able to know that I can feel that kind of emotion and still be okay. Like, what was I so scared of all those years? I'm okay. I'm here. I have people that love me and I love me. Like, I'm not the prettiest girl. I'm not the skinniest. Who cares? All that stuff is like, who cares? I could still light up a room without, I mean, my personality is like so much bigger than my looks. And I still have somebody right next to me that loves me to death. And like I said, we've been together for almost 19 years, since I was 15. And through all the good and bad, he's stuck by me through it all. So looks are nothing to me. Um, One of the things that I'm working on right now is, let's see, the younger me. So since I had to grow up so fast, I am now starting to, how do I say this? To conjure up, I guess, my inner child and like do things that make me happy. Like um going and getting ice cream. I'm 34 years old. That's never going to get old. I mean, um Saturday we just went to Cherry Creek Reservoir as a whole family, my sisters, my brother, all my nieces and nephews. And I was one of the only adults that got into the water. And my brother and sister-in-law said, "Well, at least there's another adult in here with all these kids." And I was like, "Speak for yourselves." Like, I wanted to have that fun. And being able to do that and still have that child, like, I still light up when I see like little puppies and like not be so boring and sheltered. And I love that about me. And I used to just be afraid to let my bubbly personality like shine through. but I don't anymore. And it took me a long time to get there too, but I'm still a work in progress. I'm not cured. I'll never be cured. That's that control that I have myself. I could go to the liquor store anytime I want to. I choose not to because I know what it'll lead to. And I don't want that anymore. I didn't want that when it's a disease. I didn't have that when I was struggling. I didn't want to have that control of, like, this is my life. I'll do what I want. It wasn't just my life, and it wasn't just affecting me. So now having that control, that if I go into a group setting and there's people drinking, and okay, what am I going to do? I can wrestle with, am I going to drink? Well, it's easy. I'm not going to. And I choose not to because I can't. I have a coworker that I talk to daily, and she's a drinker. That's fine. She drinks for different reasons than I did, and that's okay. She can handle herself when she's drinking. I couldn't. I had zero self-control. And I know that, and this is one thing that I tell myself all the time, one and done. One and done. Because one was never enough for me. So all those people that can drink socially and just toss back one or two, good for you. But I know that I can't. So I'll have my ice water or my Red Bull, because for whatever reason I like Red Bulls. But it's not my thing anymore. And I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with, maybe people ask me all the time if I'll ever drink again. I honestly don't think I will. And I don't think I will because I I don't, it's not a thing for me anymore. It's really not. Like, the smell of it now even is like, ugh, you're putting that in your mouth, like, gross.
Same. Yeah. So I have a question for you. So when you first stopped drinking, were you immediately able to enter a social situation where there was alcohol and say, I'm not drinking? Or did you have to avoid social situations for a little while that may or may not have alcohol present?
Um, well, I didn't have that many friends. So I actually, like, I still went into the liquor store, and like, my son really liked the beer salt. So we would like sprinkle it on lemons, and that was a thing. Um, but when I told the lady that did that directed the class that I was doing that, she said that I was just testing myself, and that maybe in some ways I was tempting myself. Like, I'm strong enough to walk into this liquor store and walk out without any alcohol. And she said that that was like my coping, I guess, but I never thought of it like that. Actually, the first time that I was in a social situation where people were drinking, it was one of my friends. It was her young son's birthday, and since the beginning of my sobriety, I have celebrated every little milestone that I have hit. Like, I told everybody on my Facebook that I was starting this journey, and everybody on Facebook has went through this journey with me. This is people that I went to high school with. This is coworkers that I used to work with. This is family. Everybody. Just, I wanted everybody to know, like, I'm finally doing it. This is me. Like, so anyway, one of my friends reached out to me and said that she was having a birthday party for her son and that there was going to be alcohol there. And my only response was that I wasn't drinking. And I said, like, I'm not uncomfortable around the alcohol. So, what I would have been uncomfortable around is people acting different towards me. Um, and it was like, that's you, you do you. Like, I'm fine. I'll stick to water, whatever. And I really had a good time. I just held her little baby that was like 6 months old and like, but I was still able to be social and still, I wasn't uncomfortable like I thought I was going to be. But that's the thing. I had to come out of my comfort zone and I had to tell myself that it was going to be okay. If I started feeling uncomfortable, like before I went, I had an action plan, like a way of escaping. So if I was uncomfortable, I had the power to get up and leave. That's it. Not sit with that discomfort and just like keep
Torture
feeling it.
yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was the power that I found through that was just being able to feel that uncomfortable feeling. No, I didn't like it and leave.
Yeah, I think that's the important part is that you had an action plan. Like you had a plan for if things got uncomfortable, right? Like that was I think that's super important is because especially for alcoholics, it's really hard to completely totally avoid alcohol, right? Just like
Oh
with
yeah.
food addictions, they it's you can't avoid food for the rest of your life, right? You can't people with gambling use disorders, they can't avoid money for the rest of their life. And for me, I all of my friends drink. My husband drinks. Like we don't do anything social without alcohol around. So it was really I had to be okay with being around alcohol and but I think it's important to go into any situation where you might be faced with a trigger with a plan in place of like, what am I going to do if this feeling gets to be too much? And knowing what your limits are, knowing what your pain threshold, for lack of a better word, is with regard to your trigger. And yeah, I think that's really cool that you went into that situation with a plan in place of what you were going to do if it got to be too hard.
Yeah.
So when you were faced with the text messages that you found on your husband's phone or that situation, like what did you do initially? Like how far into sobriety were you when that happened?
I was 11 months in.
Okay.
Um and actually what I did was I created a fake dating app. Not a fake profile. So I went in as this girl Nancy and I just sent him like a I didn't even send it to him. I was just waiting to see if he would respond to it. And it was just something simple like, "Hey, how are you?" And he was the one that responded. And he was telling me things about himself that I knew. He had a dirt bike that he liked to ride. Um the thing that hit me was when I asked if he was single. Mind you, we had been together for almost 18 years at this time, and he said that he was single. He was working overnight, so I was home with our son. So that was really hard. My heart broke into a million pieces. And just, I don't know, I worked through it because what choice did I have? I knew that I didn't want a big, huge blowout fight about it. There had to be some reason that he did it or not. I don't know. Um, so when I was in the classes, the CBT, um, one of the things that we always talked about was first thought wrong.
That I've never heard of it.
Well, the cognitive behavior therapy is like to change the way we think. So instead of like always doom and gloom, it's like to find a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. Um, so when he had sent me a picture of himself and I knew that it was him, it was just his face and his shoulders. I knew it was him. Um, he asked me for a picture. Now, what I was going to do was send him the picture of me and him that I had taken 2 months prior at his sister's wedding in Oklahoma. But first thought wrong. So I didn't send him any pictures. I stopped even responding. I knew I had what I needed. I had my fuel in a sense. Um, so one night we got into a little spat and I told him that I know what he's been doing on his phone. And then I came clean and I was like, I'm Nancy, by the way. And I know that, just know that I know. And he was kind of like, he felt betrayed. And he said something like that I set him up. And I was like, no, you set yourself up. Like, why were you doing these things behind my back? And it was because he was hurt, because I did cheat on him before I got sober. I was drunk, I was stupid, and I didn't feel like I was getting the attention from him that I wanted. That goes back to me and not loving myself. So I sought the attention from somebody else. And I came clean to him like right after it happened. I apologized. I begged him to forgive me. Anyway, he clearly didn't forgive me because this was kind of like his payback. And he never met up with anybody. He never did anything. But I guess him just feeling like he had that power, that that was his way of coping with what I did to him. So, um, we tried marriage counseling and we both decided that that wasn't the route that we wanted to go. So we just came to an agreement that we would start talking to each other, being open with each other. Now, this is all aspects of our relationship. Things that we things that we like, things that we don't like, including in the bedroom. Just being completely open with each other. And that's something that we didn't have for a very long time. He went through a drug addiction and he had to go to rehab for it for 30 days. Um, and I stood by him because I freaking love him to death. Um, but the things that happen and happened, I think that first thought wrong is really what made the difference, because I know things could have gone south real quick. And I even had a letter that I wrote him while I was at work one day, because that's where I processed it, was when I was at work. I was away from home. I was away from any kind of distractions and I could think. So I wrote him this letter that I still have in my purse that I never gave him. And sometimes I still read the letter because I didn't know how to approach the situation. I had no idea. I knew what I knew and I didn't know how to tell him. Um, but that's one of the things with the alcohol. It was like my liquid courage. Like, I'm gonna just drink and I'm gonna feel like I can conquer the world and I'm just gonna let him have it. But since I'd been sober for almost a year, I didn't have that. And I'm glad I didn't because I knew that alcohol would have just made it so much worse. Because every fight that me and him were ever in when I was drinking, it was nasty and ugly. And we said horrible things to each other. And that's not who we are. So, me being in a calmer state when it did come out, it was like that was even so much relief. Just that pressure of now it's now it's out, now it's done, it's over. And here we are, what, almost 10 months later, and it hasn't even been brought up anymore. And that's where I wanted to get at. Like, the past is the past is the past is the past. Like, you can't change it. There's no way that you can change it. All the stuff that happened with my dad, even 21 years ago, it can't be changed. I can't bring him back. I can't change the things that happened when he was here. Um, so it's moving on. And that's where I was stuck. I was stuck for a long time and I wasn't moving forward at all. Physically, mentally, emotionally, I was stuck.
Do you think that was because of the booze, because you were drinking instead of dealing?
Yeah, that's totally why.
And
Um,
question, during the when like his drug abuse or drug problem, when was that? Like during y'all's relationship while you were drinking too, or when was that going on?
that was, let's see, James was born in 2007. I think it was like 2009-ish.
Mhm.
Our son was still really little. Um, and I was drinking, but I hadn't got to that point yet. Like, I was I was still kind of like the mother, like still taking care of everybody else. And not just like because I had a son, so I was his mother. Not like that. Like, I was still making sure that my husband was okay, that everything was taken care of that had to be taken care of. And I was drinking a little, but not to where I was like blacking out.
You were still in that caregiver role that you had to take on after your dad died, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering where that kind of sat in this in your story. But it's you guys have gone through so much and y'all made it out on the other side. Like you very much have lived the unhealthy relationship, and it sounds like you're both sober minded now. You both love yourselves enough that now you can love each other well. And that's so amazing. Like you guys made it through multiple huge storms. And I think the root thing here is that you learned to love yourself. You said it earlier. And like you made the decision to get sober for yourself on your own. And you turned to your brother-in-law, right? Whenever he's the one that said, don't let this be a reason. Like, don't let this be
Yeah.
a reason you drink again. It's, you've had so many different things that you've done along the way that have helped you stay sober. And it's amazing to me. You've overcome so much. Like, you and I have really similar stories in that our dads passed away when we were young. I had to grow up really fast after my dad died too, and it almost like takes away your ability to enjoy being a child. And I love that you said that you do things that bring you joy now. That's something that I work on with my clients is helping them find the things that bring them true childlike joy because it's so important to do things that you enjoy. It's so important to have fun. So many of us that use had that taken away from us at some point, I feel like. And what you said about the people who are that have the ability to be one and done, like, yay. I tell people all the time, I don't hate alcohol. I hate the way I process alcohol. So I do not bash on people for drinking. Like, I love that some people can drink and have fun and have a good time. That's not me. You said like it was no longer fun, it just became something that you did. I resonate with that. And I think so many people who listen to this podcast do because it was no longer fun for us. Like there comes a point where it only causes pain. And then you get to a point where you finally say, I'm done. And it has to be for yourself. You have to be the one that says, I don't want to. I feel like so many people that are court ordered to stop drinking will or stop using or whatever, they're more likely to go back to using and drinking because it wasn't their choice, unless they do the really hard work and start to see that it's doing more harm than good in their life. And then they can stop and stay stopped. But so I love that you said, instead of drinking, I called someone. That's huge. Like, that's a huge thing. You have to stop and ask for help when your life is approaching unmanageability. And you did that when you found out about your husband, you stopped, you said, okay, I'm going to reach out to somebody and I'm not going to drink today. So, what are some tips that you would give to someone who has just found out something really hard or who is facing a storm in life? What are your top 3 tips for them of how to stay sober right now in this storm?
Well, number 1 is reach out to someone. That can be anybody that you trust. It could be God. Reach out to if you believe in that. Just I I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to that. So, um, I reach out to my dad, believe it or not. I talk to my dad all the time. Um, I also made a list of things that I can do instead of drinking. I have 20 things that I can do instead of drinking. Um, and it's like little things. Let's see. So take my son to the park, go for a walk, listen to music, write feelings in journal, write a poem. My brother is great at writing poems and he can just put all his stuff out there and it's deep and it's sad and but that's his thing. I think that keeps him from falling into the situation that I was in. Um, One of the last things on my list, number 20, is laugh and smile a lot. No matter how hard things have been, I try to find at least one positive thing in my day or whatever. Like, just one. Um, I looked really cute in my outfit today, or like I told a joke and made a whole room full of people laugh, or I'm just anything. Um, and I guess one of the big things is not to be afraid, not to be afraid of feeling. If you have to sit by yourself and just sit with the feelings and think about why you're feeling what you're feeling, um, and don't let it be a reason, because it's so easy to let even the smallest thing be a reason to pick up a bottle or whatever, and it's losing yourself. Don't lose yourself. And that's what I have to remember. I lost myself for a long, long time. And I knew every time I looked in the mirror, I knew that that wasn't me. And sometimes I would just stare at the mirror and wonder where I was, because I was lost. Um, so speaking of poems, I wanted to read one that I wrote um after getting sober, and I've only shared this with one person, who's my counselor, and it is not finished because I had to take a break, because what's in here is just, it's like, it's pretty deep. Um, so anyway, as a child, I was hurt and abused, always yelled at, hit, and ridiculed. Never a feeling of love in my heart. At night, the pain would tear me apart. How do I escape? When will I be free? Will I too become the abuser I see? As these hurtful thoughts race through my head, I can't help but wonder if I'd be better off dead. I begin to search for a different way to think. I was only 12 when I took my first drink. The feeling was warmth flooding my veins. All my worries and sadness drifted away. I started off easy, I started off slow, but as time went on, the urge started to grow. It was overwhelming at first, to say the least. My feelings started to come out. No, I've unleashed a beast. I was mean, I was nasty, I was hurtful and cruel. I didn't want this anymore. I was becoming the fool. I started to change, began to evolve, became the person whose problems only I could solve. I looked deep inside my heart for the younger me who'd been torn apart, the little girl who wanted to be free. I've done it. Here I am. Now look at me. Love me, hold me close, don't let me go. For me, it is the world will see. Now they will know.
Wow, that's amazing. That,
Thank,
wow, it's beautiful.
thank you.
I love it. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. I think it's so important for us to share our stories. There are so many people out there who resonate with your story. I think it's really sad that our society shames people who struggle with substance use disorders. And so I think it keeps a lot of us trapped for a lot longer than we should be. And it keeps a lot of us from getting the help that we need. And I think it keeps a lot of us from seeing that there's something the matter with our drinking or our using. So thank you for sharing your story today. Thank you for being here and for giving tips to people who might be struggling right now. Thank you for being raw and vulnerable. It takes a lot of work to get to where you are, to get to where you can share your story, because it can be hard. It can be really, really hard to talk about your trauma and your hurt. There can be shame associated with it. And just a lot of times we're taught to not talk about the drama in our families. I know a lot of cultures just ignore certain things that are going on in families, and ignoring and not talking and letting it just fester in the dark just breeds more shame and more guilt. And so it is so important for us to talk about these things and let other people know that they're not alone. So I thank you so much for being here, so much for sharing, and just being open with us. It was so good talking to you, Kelly. Do you have any last words that you'd like to share?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me and giving me the opportunity um to share my story and let others know that they're not alone and that sometimes it's not easy, but it's so worth it. And I wish that somebody would have maybe reached out to me sooner, or I don't know, I wish somebody would have given me a little bit more hope and let me know that I wasn't alone, because I thought that I was the only one that was like me, that wasn't normal and was doing all of these things because it's what I taught myself and it's all that I knew. Um so thank you for giving me this opportunity and um letting others know that they're not alone and there is hope. One of my biggest things is to always be there for my son no matter what, big or small. He can always come to me or my husband, and um I try to be open to anything that he's going through or may go through. I try to prepare myself for how I'll handle a situation. And now, like, if I feel like I've overreacted about something, because sometimes I do, I get in my emotions and I take something small to these big, huge levels that I shouldn't. But that's where I can look at myself and know that I did something wrong or said something wrong and apologize. And now I'm apologizing less and less and not having to ask if I caused a fight. That was a big thing for me. I would black out and then ask my husband and my freaking son the next day if I caused a fight, and usually the answer was yes. But I don't have to do that anymore. It's shameful for one, for me. Um, but now I can see when I'm doing something wrong, and I can fix it in the moment instead of waiting until it's too late, potentially. So,
Yeah, there's that like emotional maturity that comes with being sober that we don't have when we're drinking,
yeah,
and it feels so good.
it really does. And my son tells me all the time how proud he is, and I still share it with him too. Like, guess what? I made it to 18 months, or guess what? I'm like, I I make it a point to celebrate those little milestones, and because it's big for me. So I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, yes, another 100 days or whatever, because I didn't think I was going to make it.
Yeah. I mean, and I have friends in early recovery, and they're like, well, it's just 45 days or it's just blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's not just anything. That's
Right.
huge. It's huge because for the last however many years, you've been dealing with life drunk. Like you haven't been dealing with life. You've been ignoring life and you're dealing with it and you're facing huge big girl problems for the first time in your life and you're doing it completely sober. That's huge. Celebrate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, definitely celebrate it. Celebrate, yell it from the rooftops.
Yep.
I mean, I'd never go up to a total stranger and tell them, but sometimes I've wanted to. Like, guess what? I'm at 500 days.
Yeah.
but but it's I think it's really cool that I can celebrate that, and it's not shameful, and um it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And like, you'd be surprised how many other people are in the same boat that you're in, and you could have something in common with a total stranger and not even know it.
Yep. Yep. I know. It's crazy. Like now so for a lot of time, like a lot of years when I first got sober, I didn't talk about the fact that I had a drug problem in high school. I didn't like I hid it as much as I could. And now when I tell people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I went through that," or "Oh my gosh, my dad went through that." And it frees you and it opens up the opportunity for some conversations and some healing in some other people. I've met some people who were like, "Oh yeah, we go through that. We never talked about it. I was always so embarrassed." And with like shame, it breeds anxiety and depression and like it festers inside you. And then before you know it, you're drinking a bottle of wine every night to try to deal with the shame that's breeding inside of you.
Yeah.
And if we would just talk about this stuff, like there could be so much freedom in it. It amazes me. And I'm so glad that society is slowly changing. There's the sober movement is so big right now and mental health is so big and people they talk about mental health all the time and I just love it. I'm so glad because 10
Yeah,
years
it's huge.
ago you didn't talk about it. It was taboo to talk about in public
Mhm.
and I'm so glad it's not anymore. I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, same. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will let you go. I've now kept you for an hour, over an hour.
That's okay. I'm glad that I was able to do this and share my story, and if it helps even one person, I've done my job. And I hope that whoever listens maybe takes at least one thing away from it.
Amen. There we go. That's it. That's why we do it. All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope this episode taught you something, that you learned at least one thing, and I hope it helped you see that you were made for more than merely surviving. You were made for thriving. Crumbs are for the birds. You were made for the feast. Don't forget that. For more information on my 6-week course to cultivating an abundantly fulfilling life by reigniting your passions and zeal for life, please visit the show notes below and text course to the phone number listed. It is 806-317-8181, and you're going to text course to that number for more information. If you would like to dig in deeper each week and create your own personal roadmap to cultivating an abundantly fulfilling life in recovery, then hop on over to our Patreon page and become a Rebel VIP today. As a Rebel VIP, you get a companion episode to this podcast episode and each podcast episode that comes out, where we dig a little deeper and personalize the tools given in the podcast episode to meet your needs. You'll also have access to exclusive worksheets, principal journal pages, and other useful information that we truly will help you begin to cultivate an abundantly fulfilling life. Not in recovery? No worries. Just like with every episode that drops, the tools we share in the Rebel VIP can be used to help you cultivate an abundantly fulfilling life in all aspects of your life. For more information on becoming a Rebel VIP, please visit the show notes for the link to our website. Last but not least, if this podcast is making an impact on your life, please share it. You can subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and then take a screenshot of this episode and share it on your social stories. I will be forever thankful to each and every one of you. As always, be well, be kind, and may you find some joy this week. Bye.